Welcome, I'm Molly Gambhir. Just days after the German government started to ease the lockdown measures, the coronavirus cases in the country are on the rise. Fears over a second wave have increased, and Chancellor Angela Merkel has pledged to reimpose the restrictions if the virus happens to strike once again. In the last 24 hours itself, more than 500 people tested positive. The reproduction rate of the virus has also reached what's considered to be a dangerous level of 1.1, which means that 10 people with COVID-19 are likely to infect 11 others. Germany is also witnessing a sudden surge in COVID-19 clusters. In the past few days, a few slaughterhouses and daycare centers for the elderly have been identified as the new clusters. In the district of Coesfeld, around 200 of the 1,200 employees at a slaughterhouse have tested positive. All this while, Germany has started to resume operations in various parts. Most shops, playgrounds, small businesses, even schools have reopened. Restaurants, gyms and places of worship have also resumed normal activities in some parts, but strict social distancing norms continue to remain in place. The official stance of the German government is that the first phase of the crisis is over. Germany is now entering the second phase, and local authorities are preparing to be in an emergency situation and are likely to reimpose restrictions if the infection rate rises. Despite repeated warnings, some believe that Germany is not doing enough to fight the virus. Thousands of people have taken to the streets to protest against the existing lockdown measures. As of now, more than 171,000 have tested positive and over 7,500 have lost their lives to the infection in Germany. And joining us on the broadcast this minute is our correspondent Lucy Hof, live from Brussels. Hi, Lucy. Several European countries are now easing the lockdown measures despite new cases being reported. To what extent are these governments considering bringing back those restrictions?
Well, the way that this releasing of the lockdowns is being imposed is entirely dependent on the numbers. And as you were outlining there in Germany, if, as is the case elsewhere in Europe, we start to see those cases start to creep back up again, then we will, I think, see some lockdown measures reimposed over the course of the coming weeks and months. But as you say, yes, we are seeing lockdowns. This is a crucial day for lockdowns being released across Europe, namely in France, where we have reached phase 2, which means that the reopening of many businesses, some shops, non-essential businesses, lots of the workforce going back in today. And as a result, some scenes of packed train platforms, particularly in major cities such as Paris. We've seen pictures of a crammed metro station at Gare du Nord with commuters coming in to work on the first day back of business almost as usual. Face masks have been made mandatory on public transport, and if you're caught without a face mask, you could face a fine of €135. Similarly, here in Belgium, we've had the reopening of all shops, so the city is feeling very, very different today. We have retail stores open, cafes are doing a takeaway service, as is the case in some restaurants as well. We are told that from June the 8th, if the numbers continue to improve, that cafes and restaurants could serve an in-house service, provided that there is strict social distancing in place.
Right, are we looking at renewed attempts by several governments also for that cooperation to deal with the economic fallout?
Yes, we have the announcement of the budget a little bit later this week, which is essentially how the next phase of the bloc's economic recovery will be funded. And there has been disagreements amongst the EU 27 about this. Some countries, such as Italy and Spain, in the south that have been hit hard by this, both in the sense of the the medical pandemic, but also the economic consequences of the last few months and the coronavirus pandemic. So they are calling for the money issued by the European Commission to be issued as grants. I wouldn't have to be paid back, but more frugal countries in the north of the bloc, such as Germany and the Netherlands, are calling for that money to be issued as a loan. So We will find out more information about how the European Commission intends to find a compromise between those two positions when that budget is announced. We understand that the long-term 7-year MFF will be crucial moving forward in terms of how real financial firepower is exercised in the coming weeks and months. But it has been a tricky road to get here. We've already had the announcement of €500 billion in funds announced by the European Commission that's coming in 3 strands, effectively. One of this is a €100 billion temporary work scheme to enable governments to pay temporary workers that have been temporarily laid off to have their salaries 60 to 70, sometimes 80% of their salaries paid by the state. We've also got systems to inject some emergency funding into healthcare systems. So, yes, another major announcement coming this week, but some divisions in the EU27.
And we keep coming back to you for all of those updates. Thanks very much for the moment, Lucy Hoff. On to France now, a closer look at the situation there. After recording the lowest daily fatalities in a month, the country is now also gradually emerging from its lockdown.